Hello everybody, and welcome back to yet another BeamNG Drive video. And today, I'm going to see if I can practice drifting, so I can impress the general public by flying off a cliff and dying. So, I would like to first apologize for not uploading last weekend. Saturday, I was pretty busy getting ready for my Spanish program I'm going to be doing for the next 4 weeks, just to fulfill my high school credit, so I don't have to do it for a whole year. So yay. And yesterday we were also pretty busy, mostly because we had to take our Lexus down to the service center to get the tires replaced because they were basically completely shot. And might I add, that was not what we would say good. Yeah, we had to get them previously inflated, and the problem is that we have a broken tire pump in the garage, so basically just drained all the pressure out from the front right tire. So yeah, and the tire had no tread, and it's seen better days, so that was fun. But yeah, got new tires, new tire sensors. We had to go get them reconfigured later that day as well, so that was that. But yeah, with that all aside, I think we could start today's main part of the video, and that is trying to drift. Now, see, with drifting in BeamNG, it's a bit tedious because, of course, this game is trying to be, or mostly trying to be, realistic with the physics. So, you know, sometimes you need to have some practice. Now, I've been trying to do practice on one of my other computers, it's not this one, with some simple drift cars. So I was thinking, how about we can try and use some simple drift cars? Or we can build one out quickly, of course. Now, I think a wise vehicle to resort to for drifting would be something that's actually made for drifting. Let's see here. If I'm not blind today, I am scanning. Here we go. Okay. So, really good mod, the JBX100, basically based off the Chaser. Very good mod, might I say. Provides a pretty good foundation for a drift car, and just, you know, if you wanted a Chaser, you know, fulfill your 1JZ dreams of a drift car, this mod's for you. I'll leave a link down in the description for it. I'm not sure if it's still continued. I thought it was discontinued, but could be wrong. So this Chaser, this JZX100, is pretty good for drifting. I didn't attack that corner that good. What I recommend is trying to learn how to do clutch kicking. I can do a demonstration. So basically just clutch and then let go. So basically the wheels just spin, you know, full speed. Which will help you get the car sideways. Just bam, instant power. Just transmitting a crap ton of power to the wheels. Does help. Let's try here. This is definitely not an adequate map to learn drifting on. I will admit there are curves, turns, but not enough to ideally learn how to drift. If you want to have a good map to learn how to drift on, that would probably be, actually Actually, no, we can actually switch and come back here if need be. But I recommend doing Hirochi Raceway because, for starters, this map has a lot of corners and a lot of straightaway. So, basically, it provides a good lot of leeway for learning how to drift. And this is how I've kind of learned how to drift recently, was here on Hirochi Raceway, because there's a lot of nice tight corners, a lot of good straightaways to get some speed, and just some wide corners so you can really get a feel of how drifting is. And I will admit, yes, it is very difficult. It's not like Forza where, you know, once you handbrake drift and instigate the drift, it's like, oh, it's easy, you know. I mean, of course, if you're getting with wider angles, trying to do 90 degrees in Forza, that's not necessarily what we'd call easy. But, again, it takes experience and it takes practice. And I'm not what we'd call very good. So, yeah. Furthermore, I do recommend doing this in manual. Pretty good. Here's another example of clutch kick. Of course, it's not the best drift. Where some good drifts happen are up here on this corner. Of course, you don't always want to rely on clutch kicking, because sometimes you just fiddle around and that stuff happens, you know, go through the sand traps. So what I recommend is just, you know, learn how to get your car sideways. The first thing that you have to do for drifting is learning how to, you know, learning your car, not learning how, but learning your car. Because if you know how to better control your vehicle, it's a pretty big help to know how to control your vehicle. Because it would make more sense if you know how to come into your vehicle, you know how to control some things. See, I haven't had enough experience on this chaser, which I need a bit more. But definitely a very good starting car for drifting. And still lives up to its name. Great drifter. 1JZ makes it pretty good for drifting, I will admit. But of course, it's not just this that's good at drifting, you know. You can build practically anything into a drift car if you really put your mind to it. As long as, you know, you have quick ratio drift steering and a welded diff, you should be pretty good. And of course, one tip of mine is use the handbrake. Handbrake is very good for learning how to drift. Because, you know, you can easily instigate drifts. Like such. Of course, I'm not the best drifter in BeamNG. Because there are better people, of course. I've seen some YouTubers that are very good. But overall, like, again, a recommendation, just use the handbrake. And, well, if you're feeling adventurous, kick, but of course that takes some time to get the RPMs up. Just a few seconds, and you know, a few seconds. I do have one tip for getting a bit better, and that would be changing out cars to drift. So instead of, you know, maining, let's say this Chaser, for example. Let's say you switch over to maybe, I don't know, maybe if you have some mods installed, maybe Mitsubishi Claria or TKI series, you know, something to change it up a bit. And if there aren't necessarily drift configurations, you can always make one yourself by just single-handedly just slapping a drift steering in, power steering, and then welded diff, and just doing some engine upgrades a bit. So maybe upgrade the block, add a turbocharger if there isn't one already, and if there is, upgrade it a bit. Stage 2, and then I also recommend keeping the stock flywheel, so it takes a bit longer for engagement, the drive line or whatever. So it's not like instant throttle response. That's basically what I'm getting at here, because that sometimes makes it difficult. I've learned from my lessons of doing that. So that is something you don't want to do, is having like ultralight flywheel. You don't want to have instant throttle response. You want to have a little bit of a delayed throttle response. So I'd recommend keeping the stock one, or if you have the Chaser, keep the dual mass flywheel. It really helps for drifting. And then also, if you have race compound, I wouldn't use that. You probably want to have maybe stock or stretch tires, or if it allows for rims, drift tires. But of course that means you have a lot less grip. Because that do what you want, but of course you want to practice that. And that's kind of all I have to say for building drift cars. Which that means we could try and build one. Doesn't mean it's going to be that good of a drift car, but we can always try. Definitely the one thing I do like about this Chaser is that it has a really good steering radius. I mean, most cars in BeamNG for drifting, for their drift steering, do not go at this angle. And this is very good for drifting, so makes it easier to go out for wider turns and recover, but also makes it that much easier to, you know, wipe out and eat crap. So let's figure out what we could drift. I'm thinking we might be able to do an ETK, mostly for one, it is inline 6, but that doesn't mean, you know, inline 4 is bad at drifting. Okay, as you can see, I do have some drift builds already built. These actually are alright, not great, but they do work for drifting. So I would recommend, if you want to start off with making something, you know, high powered, probably start off, you know, with a higher trim level. So for example, this homologation model, which is based off the 190E, obviously, but I'd recommend doing a higher trim level. And if you don't want to do that, you know, you could always start from the very bottom. And say if you're using the TKI series, you can use a 2400, which is a 2.4 liter engine, and it is possible to drift. It's just you have to tune the engine a bit. Of course we can tune that, but I want to see if we're able to use one of these. And the problem is about this is that it is all-wheel drive. Of course you can drift with all-wheel drive, it's just not what we'd call easy to do so. So, first of all, if you have an all-wheel drive vehicle, you want to set up your transmission. So you have rear-wheel drive transfer case, limited slip, welded. Steering, you want quick ratio drift steering. Now if you have mods that accommodate like CJD, I highly recommend getting this mod. It has a lot of customization. This is basically pretty universal from what I've seen. It's not applied to basically every vehicle, but it's applied to most vehicles. Of course, if some of that are mesh slaps, I think that it does apply, but I'm not entirely sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. But for now, we'll just use quick ratio drift steering. So now that you have a bit better steering radius and more power behind the drift potential, it makes it that much easier to drift, I'd admit. And you of course can always upgrade the turbo, but I'm staying to stage 2 because I mentioned that earlier. Of course, I don't know if I'm gonna be that much better with drifting this episode. I don't know, maybe not, maybe I will, but you know, we'll see, right? That's all that matters. Furthermore, one thing I do recommend having is high performance upgrades for your radiators, because you know, when you're drifting, of course, you're racing the car pretty hard. You know, not necessarily racing, but you're driving it really hard. So I'd recommend having some good airflow. And one major thing, I don't know if I mentioned it, but get a car that's a manual, because automatics are not good for drifting, because it likes to cycle through gears, you know, and for drifting you want to have full control. So you know, if you're going in at a turn at second gear, in automatic you'll just switch into third, and then your RPM just go, you know, go down the toilet. And with manual you have more control, and you can, of course, clutch kick, like I just did there. And of course, clutch kicking does help on cars that aren't easy to drift, because it helps the wheels spin a bit more, like such. And one of my main recommendations is don't get too courageous trying to go around corners. Just take them easy at first with your car, because if you go really, really wide and do something, you know, like a really, really wide angle, more than like a 67, if you're even able to do that without failing, and you wipe out, that's kind of what I do a lot. Is I get over courageous, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can make this harder. Because see, you reach your max potential, your max steering radius. So if you don't have a really great steering radius, I don't recommend doing super wide drifts. Of course you can do wide drifts. It requires a lot of practice to get those drifts to happen, but overall, I'd recommend start doing some smaller angle drifts first, and then work your way up. So eventually you can get some good angles. And if you have any, I don't know, modified steering racks or stuff, use those if you want to get wider angle drifts for cars that don't necessarily have good drift steering. Because those will help your angles. And I don't know if this is even applicable, but sometimes I think removing the inner fenders helps with the angle, especially with the 200 VX. Those cars can get really sideways, especially with the drift steering. But I've noticed that when you have the inner fenders out, it gets a bit wider. I don't know if that's actually a thing in BeamNG, if that if it allows for more of a wider steering radius because you don't have as much of a restriction, or if it's just the steering rack itself. If it's allowing for a bit more. But overall, I think my main recommendation, even though I've had a plethora of those, start out with something easy to drift. For example, how about like a pre-built one? I'd recommend probably going to the 200 VX. Very good car to start drifting, even if you're using the stock in-game BeamNG car that they have, like their drift cars. Those are pretty good. They're a little bit difficult to learn at first, but once you get your grasp on it, it's quite easy to drift. Of course, I'm saying this from a, hopefully more experienced perspective, not what we would call a, professional drifter. But really, sometimes it's not just the car, it's the driver, which if you've heard that many times, skill is basically what it is. Overall, if you have a good car, and you've done a plethora of practice, and you have a good grip on your vehicle, it makes it that much easier to get better at drifting. But what I would say is, again, get better at drifting by just learning your car a bit. That's all I'd say. Because if you don't, you can have horrible failures, like doing weird crap like this. This is working out alright, and as I say that, I fail. So, yeah. Let's see. Can we do one last drift build? I'll see if I can do it out of something that's not necessarily a drift car, per se. That makes sense. Of course, I recommend staying away from the bolide unless you know how to drive the bolide. I will admit, bolide is very difficult to drive. I mean, very difficult if you don't have the experience. Choices. You could do the Saga. Or the Pessima. You could also try the 300Z. Yeah, why not? Let's try you. Of course there's a drift spec, but I've tried to drift in that and I will say it is not adequate for drifting. Okay. So manual is what makes life very easy. Let's see, engine. Exhaust. You don't really have to change out the exhaust for this. Stock ECU. If you want to get some of those higher RPMs, I'd recommend getting the race ECU. Jeez Louise, I cannot talk this one. And also, I do recommend getting a turbo that does not have a lot of lag. And if you don't understand what that means, basically a delay in like spooling up. So basically like this, there's minimal, if not basically no lag. So you don't want a turbo that has like 5 seconds of lag. So that takes like 5 seconds to spool up the turbo. And that really happens for big, beefy turbos. We'll do advanced cams. And also, sometimes the heavy duty blocks. Yeah, heavy duty blocks sometimes make it easy to drift. I'm not gonna say ultra heavy duty, but yeah, it sometimes helps. Also, I'm gonna swap out the radiator. I will actually remove the inner fenders. I don't think it really helps with the drift, the angle. It might, because you don't have, you're not rubbing up against the inner fenders. But also sometimes it's really the steering. It is really just the radius that you have. How far you can actually turn it. See? That seems pretty good. I think we can give it a try. Actually, I forgot the most crucial component that I briefly told you about earlier. Yeah, differential. You can probably see why I may have forgotten about this, mostly because the customization for this thing is a bit wonky. I wouldn't necessarily call it a disaster, but it's a bit wonky. Come on. You always want to make sure you don't counteract your steering too hard if you're coming around a corner, because sometimes it's usually instinct if you just snap it back as fast as you can. If the angle goes a bit out of hand and it's by then purely uncontrollable. So just slow recovery, not super fast. And also, if you are good with gears, I would recommend tuning them a bit, just so it's more accommodating, so it's not like you're shifting all the way up to, fourth gear to get some sideways action. I think what would make sense is having a high, taller final drive and taller gears. And so basically taller is like 4 and above, I believe, which allows for better acceleration as opposed to higher top speed. So if you have a taller gear ratio, or gear ratios, basically it means you're gonna have better acceleration over top speed. So if you have like maybe a 5 or above, it's not gonna be like, your top speed's not gonna be like 200, maybe around 160, 170. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but I would recommend changing the gears for acceleration, especially because it, you don't need as many. Of course, you'll need more revolutions of the drive shaft to spin the rear wheels. That's kind of what it means, I believe. If I'm wrong, correct me, but the number, I believe, means the amount of time the drive shaft spins in order to complete, to make the revolution, or the amount of revolutions for, God, I don't know where I'm going with this, but you can look it up if need be. But yeah, again, having a taller final drive slash universal gear ratios is very adequate for drifting. And of course all the other components I've listed. And if your vehicle accommodates for it, drift tires, well, not just the vehicle but the rims. So yeah, I think that'll about do it for today. Simple little drift tutorial and me going on a rant about how I could previously potentially try and drift. So yeah, I hope you guys, oh my gosh, I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. Sorry if I'm a bit of a mess. I don't know, 6 or some odd hours of sleep don't necessarily help, but either way, I hope this tutorial helps a bit, even though it wasn't entirely clear. I hope you get the general gist of what I was trying to bring across. So yeah, until next time, don't take your drift too wide, kids, because bad stuff happens, especially to your bank account.